So last week we left off on the whole car analogy in disregarding one of Jordan Peterson's, I think, rules in life. But I think we came to the conclusion that it wasn't actually what I initially stated it to be, because I thought initially it was not to caring what others people think about you. But I think you said it was what was that?
So compare yourself to who you are today, not to who someone else. No, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Yeah. And then I touched up on a car analogy. And obviously, people watching, if you haven't seen last video, go to check it out. There's going to be a link up on the top right corner. And I referred to that car analogy at the end of the video, was saying that we all at least have like you hear all these people every now and then say like, oh, you have to have that don't give a fuck mentality to be like successful and all that, right? But I think I think that's kind of bogus. Like, we all do have people in our lives that we care about, and actually, and for that matter, we care what they think of us, like whatever is like your friends, family members.
So did you just say that people are saying that you have to have a I don't give a fuck mentality in order to be successful?
Yeah. Well, you see all these motivation,
but don't give a fuck about what?
Because like what others think of you and stuff like that. Okay. But I think that, like I said before, it's quite easier said than done to actually have that mentality. And even those people are guilty of, I think everyone is guilty of having people. We have people who we care of, right? Like family members, friends, etc., who we actually have it. We care of their opinion of us, and will actually change because of their opinion. We're not obviously going to care about maybe some people might not care about like all the class colleagues who they rarely talk to, is their opinion of them, right? But I think that's what I wanted to touch up on, was that with my current generation, I think that without stating like a current situation where, like, due to us being at that stage in our life where I think we care too much on what others perceive us, like how we care, like we try to control factors that we can't control, like that's out of our control. Sorry, more say.
So in your experience, how is that manifested in your personal experience?
I think, even for other people as well, I think, it's mainly rolling around my like age demographic, and even for me included, I've experienced, like, I think that if you truly love yourself, right, and yet you give more priority to others' opinion, which sometimes I see in others, and it was all myself, I'm guilty of it sometimes, and you end up restricting. I think it restricts yourself from doing certain things that you want to do, like just to fit in or like be perceived a certain way. I've also experienced that in terms of also like practically like forcing myself to not care, or so like on what others think. So like I would practically be like, oh, I'd have that mindset. I'd have to lock in a mindset going into a room or whatever, or into a group of friends, and being like, I know they're gonna say something about me, or they're gonna have this sort of opinion. I have to have that. I just automatically like pre-lock my mindset into thinking I'm not gonna care what they think. I'm just gonna block it out. But like, I think there's a difference between, obviously, I mean, last episode, I was trying to give my advice, because obviously I've been on the two ends of the table of like practically forcing myself to not care what they think, and obviously like being at the end of like actually taking it in and actually believing what they say.
So give me a practical example of when that's happened. So when has someone said something or done something and you have sort of like forced yourself to not care even though you actually cared? What was that example? What was that time that you can think of?
I see this is a personal example, but I probably won't. Probably won't put this in. Maybe I'll see what I feel like at the end of this. But so yeah, it's about this.
Well, it's good. It's sometimes it's good to get personal. You know, but have a real solid example so people understand sort of what it is that we're actually talking about.
Yeah, so like with this, like starting this up, right, and starting this discussion thing up with like YouTube and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, starting these like episodes, these discussion episodes, right? And
Mm.
you know, obviously the first video we dropped, like I think I talked to you about it, or like on text, and I was saying like everyone obviously like has a problem with for some reason, like
Oh,
you and me having these discussions and
okay.
considering it to be weird, which I don't really,
Okay.
I personally don't see. And you know,
Yeah.
I seem to ask them like, why, like I care, right? I care why, like I don't know why I cared. Like I had to
Yeah.
practically force myself when going into like school the next day, which turned out
Yeah.
to not be actually that bad. Um,
Yeah.
like I practically force myself like to have that mindset when walking into the room or like the classroom, for example, and being like,
Yeah.
oh, no matter what they say or no matter what they make fun of or whatever, I'm not gonna give a fuck what they think of me, and I'm gonna walk out of there
Okay.
with the same mindset, right?
All right.
So I have to
How did
practically reinforce
that?
that.
So how did that go for you? How did that go for you?
Like I said, it actually wasn't even that bad. So I over
Yeah.
anticipated what actually was going to be said.
Yeah.
So I was like with everything, I overthink shit.
Yeah.
I overthink shit. So I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
thinking,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
gonna say this about me. They're gonna make fun of this and blah blah blah. But like that,
Yeah.
everyone like I walked in class, and everyone just
Yeah.
gave me a round of the whole class gave me a round of applause.
Oh,
And the
really?
the teacher there was like. Michelle Harrop, yeah, I think you know.
Oh, yeah.
She was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what? So I don't get a round of applause when I walk in every time. So yeah, it
So,
was
so they, so, okay. So that's like the opposite of what you thought was
yeah,
going to
yeah,
happen,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So yeah,
I can't remember who it was I was listening to, but they had a good quote. And whenever I listen to things and I hear things that resonate with me, I always write them down. And
yeah, yeah,
this is the quote that sort of reminded me of what you just said. It said, "There are more things likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more
yeah,
in our imaginations than in reality."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know, and I think that's true for so many people. We catastrophize and we create situations in our heads that that uh, when you confront your fears and you confront that reality, actually don't manifest in that really in the way that we
yeah,
think it does. You know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
why it's so important to throw yourself in those situations, right? Like what you did was you went into that class and you confronted your fear, right? Because it's your fear, it's no one else's, it's yours, right? You
yeah,
confronted that. And the more you do that, the more you begin to realize, shit, fucking hell, what was I afraid of? What was I afraid of? There's
yeah,
actually nothing to
exactly.
be afraid of here,
Yeah.
right? So, and what did you learn from that? Like how did you grow from that?
Um, See, like personally, I think I'm not going to go through it. I'm not going to go through it. I'm going to go into every situation like that, anticipating, or even like in this case, for
Mm,
example, over anticipating what's going to happen and making up potential scenarios and outcomes. Like, because that's what I do. That's who I am.
mm,
I just overanalyze situations and think of every possible outcome that can occur, right? And
mm.
knowing, and obviously observing and knowing people, and obviously I got to the point where I'm kind of like a pro at now, like kind of psychoanalyzing the people I'm around, and obviously, and I'm getting to know, but anticipating what their actions are going to do towards a certain situation or scenario. And I've had that like inner prediction sometimes with some of my mates, and before they do something or like a situation at hand, like someone likes to talk shit or something about them, I know just by being around them and actually being very observant and taking in minor details about who they are and character as a character, it's like I know what their actions are going to be towards that. Like they're going to act this way. They're going to act rationally. Like I'm very observant on emotions and how that governs others' lives as well as myself.
And yeah, and you're doing that yourself, right? You're pointing
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sense of perception on yourself. Yeah. And so
yeah,
when you know that you're going to react in a certain way to a certain thing, and then you probably start to realize that you're catastrophizing, the
yeah,
key
yeah,
there is to like realize that you're actually catastrophizing. It's not as bad as it's going to be, and then throw yourself into the deep end and fucking away you go. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and that to me is how you grow. You
yeah,
know, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people will do that catastrophizing stuff in their head, and then they'll be too afraid to go to school, right? Or
yeah.
they'll turn away from confronting that issue, and I think they're really doing themselves a disservice in that sense,
Yeah, because
because
it pulls them away from things that they actually want to do or things that's actually good or
yeah,
meaningful in their life.
100%.
based off like
100%.
trying to fit in or like wanting
Mm,
something that's completely out of their control, like the way someone perceives you or someone's a
mm.
judgment or even opinion of you. You can't control
Yeah,
that's completely out of your control, even as a stoic. And I think that
yeah.
stoicism is good because like it's a really good at distinguishing the difference between focusing on stuff that you can control and not having a care or worry about in the world about stuff you
Mm,
can't control, like others' opinions, for example.
mm. But do you think like so if one of the fundamental principles of Stoicism is to not worry about things that are outside of your control,
Yeah.
do you think that that could lead to like a suppression of emotions? Right. So
Yeah, it
say for
does. It does.
example, yeah, and so okay, so if you think that, then if that could be the case, then is that necessarily a good thing, right?
I don't
Because
think that's
one
necessarily
of
a bad thing.
one of the things that I keep hearing a lot about now is about being emotionally vulnerable, right? Or being in touch with your emotion, and not
Yeah.
just
Or
being in touch with your
your
emotions, but
feminine self, your feminine like as a
well,
man.
take the femininity or masculinity thing out of it. It's just
Yeah.
about being able to understand your emotions, and then communicate, have the confidence or courage to communicate your emotions to others around you, right?
Yeah.
So how does that coincide with stoicism, if stoicism to a degree is about repressing your emotions when confronted with things that occur to you that are outside of your control?
See, like,
What are your thoughts?
well, I think oh, it does. It obviously does. It suppresses your emotions, or the whole principle, underlying principle, is to reduce negative emotion by embracing positive, by also increasing positive emotion at the simultaneously. So it's it's really hard to like the whole principle is just like essentially you can think of a stoic. I don't know if you've ever met a stoic in real life, but they almost act like a robot with certain situations, right? Like I think Epictetus, you know, his whole saying on like never lose something, only return it, right? Emotions are quite what is it called? They're kind of like all over the place. They're very fleet. They fleet all the time. Like
Mm,
they fluctuate all the time throughout, like times throughout day in, day out, like
mm,
time in, time out throughout the day, right? They're very
mm,
unreliable to base off your reasoning or like your decision off, right? So like for example, like,
mm.
how many times do you make or does anyone make like really a decision based off their emotion? Like their decision has been the drive oh, sorry, the decision they made is a drive force off their emotion, like acting aggressive or like, you
All
know,
the time.
and then yeah,
Mm.
and then being like 2 3 days or even like a week later and actually being like in self regret and be oh why did I do that, or why did I do that,
Yeah,
and
but that,
ponder
that
about
doesn't
it.
necessarily mean that that's bad in all cases,
Yeah, I
right? There are
know, but then
sometimes where you need to, where that impulse to act on emotion can be the difference between something as significant as life and death, right? Like if it is the anger that I feel towards someone breaking into my house, which makes me
yeah,
confront them and protect my children and my family, then that's not necessarily a bad thing,
yeah, I don't
right?
think that is.
It could be depending on the situation, but
Yeah,
there are what's that saying? In matters of the heart, no, in matters of love, the heart rules. So I don't know if you've heard that before,
no,
but that sort of, oh well, it's an interesting one. Um,
yeah,
when you're dealing with things like love and relationships, some people would say it's better to listen to your emotions and be led by your emotions rather than the rational side of your brain.
yeah,
Because the rational side of your brain is going to try and talk you out of a lot of stuff,
yeah,
right?
100%.
And maybe even talk you into some sort of stuff that might not necessarily be beneficial for you in a particular relationship.
I was just comparing it to being like, how often do you regret, like have that instant regret, like a day or a week later after making a decision based off your emotion,
Yeah.
in comparison to making your decision off a logical?
Oh, well, like you
Yeah,
could say the same thing about logic as well. Like, how many times has your logical brain talked you out of doing something that's probably really good for you to do? right? Like
But
especially,
it's
especially
but normally when you make a logical decision, like in the Stoic sense, you're normally evaluating and analyzing the situation prior to hand and not letting your emotions get involved. Like with attachment, right? Say if you have moral,
Mm.
I'm not gonna like name drop or anything, but recently this happened with one of my friends. Like one of his moral values in a relationship got kind of like his boundaries, for example, got extended a bit. And he's let his emotions get in the way of actually it's letting his partner know, like, oh, okay, you've crossed my moral boundary in the
Mm.
relationship. So I'm either gonna give you a warning or hence leave. But then his emotions go in the way because he has that attachment, right? It's all goes back to like Epictetus, right? Having that emotional attachment to something is actually not so good. Like I can read it right now. I have it right now. It says, "Never say I've lost it, but I have returned it." So is your child dead? It is returned. Is your wife dead? It is returned. Is your estate taken away? Well, is not likewise returned, but he who took it away is a bad man. What is the difference to you who the giver assigns to take it back while he gives it to you to possess, take care of, or take care of it? But don't view it as your own, just like travelers view a hotel. That's how he has that approach on just attachment and how emotion can even sometimes interfere with your logic and just letting
what
things go.
what type of relationship
Like
would
an intimate relationship. Let's say
a
intimate.
Stoic
Oh, what do
have
they have with their partner?
with his, no, with his children? What do you think about that? What type of a relationship would a Stoic have with his children?
I'm not so sure. I'm not a full
Parent.
blown. I'm
Yeah,
not a yeah. I'm not a parent, right?
yeah.
But I'm also not a
But
full
okay,
blown
but we
stoic
can
yet, so
yeah,
I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
yeah,
that
yeah.
experience.
Yeah, but so based on that philosophy,
Piece it
right?
together.
Like
Yeah, yeah,
like so okay. So we don't want our emotions to control our actions,
yeah.
right?
100%.
And all right. Then let's say your child is maybe in a fight with another kid, right? The bully's picking on him. Okay.
Yep, yep,
The your immediate reaction based, like I'll use an example for me. My immediate reaction based on my son coming to me saying, "Oh, Daddy, this boy pushed me down the slide or whatever." My
yeah, yeah,
immediate reaction is to give him a hug, comfort him, and say everything's going to be okay. But my logical brain, and that might what now that immediate reaction, it might be what he needs right now. Then my logical brain says, "All right, no, that's not really what I should do. I should get him to. I should say to him, okay, he pushed you. Um, what do you think you should do about it?
yeah.
Right? Do you think that you should run away? Do you think that you should confront him and say, hey, I don't like that. I don't appreciate that. Don't do that. Um, you know, uh, I, I don't know. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is there room for the emotional side within Stoicism to is there room for that when it's required? Or is it just completely no, let's think all logically about everything and
It.
impassively?
I think. Well, I think with maintaining the state of happiness, and I don't know if Marcus Aurelius also refers to it, but I know Aristotle definitely does with his whole virtue theory and his whole that whole pathway to happiness. Um, like pleasure with like have surrounding yourself with friends and family, right, and other external objects. A main factor or like a main acquisition that you need to maintain that state of happiness. So you need friends and family around you to actually remain in that state, like maintain that state of happiness once you reach it. So it's all about being a virtuous character, right? So, and obviously, I think I've talked to you off camera about it. Um, Always trying to be within your vices of deficiency or excess in any characteristic trait. It can be with truth or it can be with courage, you know. And you can't be a virtue. You can't, you're not born. No one's born a virtuous character, right? You have to emulate that off someone, right? So the kid would be off the batch and his father as a stoic, for example, in this example, he would already be starting to emulate the values of his father. Because I think every child or every son or daughter would look up to their parents or the guardians and try to mimic things that they do, right? So like, for example, you may not swear very much around your kids, because then they would say back, they'd probably turn around and be like, out of the blue, they'd be like, oh fuck, and you'll be like, oh no, that's not good, because you don't want them to say it at school and get in trouble, and right. So
Mm.
yeah, so it's all about emulating that sense of character, and it's all about obviously character building. So I think as a child, I don't know what I think it's really dependent on what the age we're talking about this child is in for this example. But I think it would be good. I think as a stoic, they would understand that as this early an age, being a stoic as a kid at this young an age, or say we're like talking about like 8 or 5 years old, is quite unnecessary to have a very logical and a like almost a nonsensical way of having to express your emotion, because they're very against all that. They would understand that they need to have that emotional that initial, maybe probably would have what if I was from what I'm like gathering, but I'm not really a full-blown stoic yet, but like I said last episode, I'm stoic in more so a stoic in training, right, practicing it at the moment. So but at the moment I would stand by, yeah, obviously having that immediate response that he needs, that emotional comforting, or that, that a state where he can be, oh, okay, everything's going to be better, to calm them down. And once they're calmed down, then actually use that situation as a learning curve to actually get over. So like you alluded before, you would probably be like, oh, what do you think you should do next time this happens? And it might be, oh, go tell the teacher, or even be like, or stand my ground and push back, right? And obviously Stoics are very against that type of like that violence conflict, being very passive in that regard. So then you can observe, okay, my kid is now thinking this pathway of logic. Let me maybe re-narrow him into the right direction of where I want him to.
So I'll pick up on something you just said there. Do you
Yeah.
think that the repression of violence is a good thing?
Okay, so in the past, where like in the Stone Age, era, where we're all like very less civilized than what we are now, 100%, I think what would you say? Violence was
Yeah.
it shouldn't be
Well, I'll say
but
aggression. I'll say
aggression.
aggression.
Yeah, I don't think it should be. But in when speaking that sort of like age or
Don't think
sense,
so.
right? But in
Don't
today and
think. Oh,
age,
hold on. Don't think what should be. Do you don't
I
think
don't think it
modern day
should be
aggression
regressed. I don't think it should be regressed. I think
repressed? Oh, you don't think it's a
repressed.
good
Sorry,
thing? Okay.
repressed. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think it should be repressed.
Yeah.
But in
Mm.
modern day society, we're more civilized and we're more advanced in technology, etc. I think that's probably irrelevant though. I think it should be, I think, modern day. Like with everything, a lot of our natural like instincts we have,
Why
like
though? Why don't you think? What are the benefits of aggression in your opinion?
there's no real, I don't think there is real any benefits, to be honest,
Of
because I think
aggression?
yeah, well,
Really?
in modern day, well, no, in modern day, right? Aggression, I think, when I think that, I think of like getting
So
pissed off
what's your
at someone,
yeah?
and then
What's your
just like,
definition of aggression? Yeah.
I'd just
What's your
be like,
definition of
I'd be like,
aggression?
oh, for me, when someone says they're aggression, like getting quite like angry or like frustrated with something, right? And maybe acting quite irrational, like maybe like hitting someone, or that, like taking it out on someone or something for that matter. I think obviously
Mm.
it can be used if it's used in the right way. So like for example, like in the gym, you can like help you, actually been proven in studies to help you like obviously push through reps, etc. And emotions are, I think, is a good motivator for like even with goals and helping you stay disciplined on that pathway. But I think in the sense of acting out and taking it out on something and being like physical, when in the physical sense and physical regards, I don't think it's necessary.
Ever?
In modern day, no.
There's many types of aggression. We'll talk about physical aggression. I think that's pretty
Yeah.
interesting. So you don't think there's any time where physical aggression is
Okay, so
beneficial.
okay, so if everyone didn't act on physical aggression, no one, like with your example, like with if a guy, an intruder came in your house, right, and wanted to
Mm,
like attack you, you'd have that aggression to protect, right? But
yeah,
that intruder would never have that initial aggression to actually want to come in and invade your house, right? So let alone,
I would disagree with that
so
because
what would invader? What would an invader's motive be? They would have some sort of aggression,
money,
something. Oh yeah,
money,
okay, but then they would be aggressive
drugs,
in that. They'd be
mental
physically
illness.
aggressive in that regards of getting to there, right? So they'd like with them, they'd have a gun and like point it at the cashier register, like, oh, put in the thing, and if they don't apply, they'd probably more likely shoot them, right? That's not going to initially happen if no one has aggression, I don't think. And then you wouldn't need to act out that way physically.
Yeah, I disagree with you because I don't think it takes aggressive people to do horrible things, right? There are horrible things done by passive people all the time. You know, like
Yep.
a true sociopath who has
Yep.
no emotions whatsoever, can do horrible things to people because you know they're not affected by it at all. But
Yep.
what I'm saying is or what I'm asking is,
Yep.
you don't think physical aggression is an important
Necessary.
or necessary part of today's society?
I don't, no, I don't think like getting physical with someone, I don't think there's any real benefits to that.
Even if your own safety is at risk, right?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Your safety wouldn't initially be at risk if someone.
Yeah, but I mean, like okay, so you can't deny the fundamental biology of humans, right? There are aggressive
Yeah, yeah,
tendencies
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah, yeah, yeah.
people, so that exists. You can't say it doesn't exist,
Yeah, it does
right?
exist.
So
I just don't think it's necessary. I think, well, obviously we
okay,
evolve.
so,
We evolve
so
over time. We evolve over time, right? And obviously our brains rehardwire as we evolve, right? And our technology, etc. Like, but I think we're
yeah.
at that state in our life.
Hmm.
I think they're at that state as a society where that's no longer needed, as if
Hmm.
you were needed in like pure survival age, like in the Stone Age and all that, right? So I don't think it's needed these days. I don't think there's any re-correlating benefits to actually acting out physically aggressive towards anything.
I think
For this example,
if your safety is at risk, 100%, you know,
mm-hmm. Yeah, I
you
agree.
need to act in a way to defend yourself, and I think
Yep.
that sometimes means to be aggressive. Um, I think that can issues be solved with violence? Probably not today. Like I think that's pretty stupid.
Yeah,
I think you can
that's
pretty
what I'm
much
alluding
solve
to.
all of your issues without that. But then I think like all of contact sports, right?
Yeah,
Or sports in general, you know, even if it's a non-contact sport, has a degree of physical aggression. So,
yeah.
so are we
But that's part
saying?
of the game. That's part of the game. I'm not.
But
But that's. I think
it's
that's
not.
two completely different.
But I
Yeah,
think
completely.
I disagree with it. It's more than part of the game, right? That's an outlet for an inherent trait that we have.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that I don't think we can actually ever get rid of that outlet. Sorry, ever get rid of that physical trait. We can't ever physically get rid of
Oh no, I don't
aggression.
think. No, I'm not
And
saying we should. I'm
and
just saying it's not
yeah,
really necessary. Like
it's not
we're
relevant.
solving.
Yeah, but
Yeah, it's
okay,
not
but
relevant.
if you say yeah, and I would probably agree with you. But then if it's not relevant in today's society, but then we also have people who have aggressive tendencies, it's like okay, well, how do you control that? How do you manage that? Is it through sports? Is it through? I don't think it's something that you can. Is it something that they have to learn themselves? Is it
Yeah, they
something that
do.
you have to teach
They do.
kids?
They have to keep their emotions in line, I
Or
think.
that can be taught. I'm not sure about that.
I think, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's all about keeping emotions intact. If there's like a class, for example, if there's a class of like 20 people, right? And there's that one kid, right, who's like super
Yeah.
aggressive towards everything, or like not everything, but like if you seem to frustrate him, he'll get very like he would want to get physical, like, oh, I'll fight you
Hmm.
or whatever. Like just use an extreme example.
Yeah, that's unsocialized behavior. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. That's
especially
what I'm referring to. Like, it's just
yeah.
unsocial to be like that. And it's
Yeah.
mainly you would view that kid as like someone who can't really keep their emotions intact and having to
Hmm.
have that outlet every time he feels frustrated or angry towards someone, or if they did something bad to him, not actually sitting down and being like, okay, you did this, I didn't like that. What can we do now moving forward? Instead of acting emotionally and being like, oh, fuck you, all that bullshit, because that doesn't get you anywhere. That doesn't get you into modern day society.
100% sure. I think being abusive definitely
Yeah,
doesn't really get you anywhere.
but
But
I
I
think
think
aggression's
if you
obviously
can,
tied to that.
I think if you, yeah, I would say so. But I think if you can channel that aggressive tendency into a coherent and productive channel that aggression through other means in order to get your way. I think it's better that you have that initial aggression than not have it, right? Because I think passive people, um, if you're more, I guess, not, if you don't have that
Yeah,
trait, really, that aggressive trait in your body, it's like, well, how do you, when you're confronted with someone who can control their aggression, how do you fight back against that if their opinion is different to yours? Like, not dialogue, but even like, if you can use that aggression in the way that you speak, for example, or is motivated to get what they want, and they are also aggressive by nature, but then they
mm,
can, I'm talking about someone who is able to talk articulately, who is intelligent, who is, in a discussion perhaps, or
mm,
in a meeting, for example, to get their opinion across and articulate their opinion
yeah,
in a way that is convincing to others. What chance does passive people have against that? But they're also highly socialized as well, and then they can
yeah.
use that aggression to their advantage.
I think obviously you're right. I think those type of people are more motivated to, like, for example, get their answer across the board or whatever. They're more motivated to do stuff because they have that emotional, like, push, that emotional drive, and I think that's more powerful than not
Don't
having
like
that.
losing as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think that having emotional drive is very powerful when making a decision, as well as adds emphasis on top of that. But with a was it a sociopath, they'd be more aware of, or more observant of others, right? And would able to manipulate their way across the board in a less aggressive or less manner as someone else who was like aggressive, right? So I think they'll be more successful 9 times out of 10 with getting their opinion across the board, because they'll say it in some sort of way or flow that they will know that, oh, this person is gonna see it, like they'll almost reshift the way that they present themselves or present something or an idea, that'll make it almost impossible for that other person who they're doing the meeting in, for example, is going to disagree, right? It's almost like you're giving them into a trap. You're putting them in a trap, right? But I think, yeah. Well, I think obviously I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good. I think, yeah. But I think with stoicism, I think myself even has sort of that trait as well of like sociopaths, of just like analyzing and observing others and just predicting and saying things in a way that can like calm them down or like get what you want, you know. And I think that's probably not so good in the long run, but it's far to say, it's far to say that stoics don't have emotion. It's just they rarely would let that emotions govern their lives.